Hello.
Hello.
So, a while back, I got into brewing my own alcohol and I decided to do some experimentation with it. I happened to have some canned cherry pie filling and this crazy idea popped into my head one day. Could I make alcohol from cherry pie filling? And I realized that doing this is in itself a form of an adventure, so I pulled out a camera and started recording. I didn't really know what I was expecting, but I knew that I wanted to do this as cheaply as possible, so I started with bread yeast. Yeast is what turns sugar into alcohol. Normally brewers will use a purpose-made yeast for whatever they're making, like cider, wine, or beer, but they are significantly more expensive than bread yeast, and bread yeast is a lot more readily available at my local grocery store. My thoughts were that it should still work even if it really isn't meant for it. Next, I have my water. This is just a 4-liter jug of distilled water. This will also serve as my fermentation vessel, but for now I'm using it to hydrate my yeast. I hydrated the yeast because I wanted to make sure that it was alive before I dumped it into my brew. I did this first because it takes a bit for it to do its thing and start bubbling. If it bubbles up, that means it's alive and healthy, and if it just sits on the bottom and stays inert, that means that the yeast is no good. Next, I needed to calculate how much sugar I needed to add. So a fair warning, this next bit gets a bit mathy, but hang in there, this is a necessary part of the alcohol making process. So every food item in Canada has a nutritional information label. I used this to figure out how many grams of sugar were in the can of pie filling. This is important because I would need to use this number to reduce the total amount of sugars I would add in after I mixed the filling with the water. So, the total size of the can was 540 milliliters, and there was 24 grams of sugar per 83 grams of filling. So in the metric system, milliliters and grams can be interchanged. So I divided 540 by 83 and got 6.5. So that tells me that there are 6.5 servings in this can. I then took the number of servings and multiplied it by 24 to get 156. This told me that in this can of pie filling, there was a total of 156 grams or 156 milliliters of sugar. So to understand this a little bit better, let me explain how the metric system works. 1 cubic centimeter of water equals 1 gram. 1 gram of water is equal to 1 milliliter. 1,000 grams is 1 kilogram, and 1,000 milliliters is 1 liter. So therefore, 1 liter of water is equal to 1 kilogram of water. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So I calculated for 3 liters of water because I wouldn't be able to use the 4 full liters, and I wanted the alcohol volume to be roughly at 13%. But I calculated for 15% because I wanted this to end up a little bit sweet at the end. So I took 3,000 milliliters, which we've already determined is 3 liters, and multiplied it by 0.15, or 15%. I got 450. I then subtracted how much sugar was in the can of pie filling, which was 156, which gave me a total of 294 grams of sugar that I would need to add. So these bags of sugar come in 1 kilogram each. So roughly a little more than a quarter of the bag of sugar would need to be added to the brew. I dumped my water into a sanitized pitcher, dumped in my sugar, and then dumped in the pie filling. I mixed everything together and then took a pH reading. A pH reading is essentially measuring the level of acidity. The lower the number, the more acidic a substance is. Yeast can roughly tolerate anything above a pH level of 3. For safety's sake, you also want to keep the pH below 4.5 because certain harmful bacteria can grow in a low pH environment, and we don't want to make anyone sick. The pH looked good to me, so I poured the mixture into my fermentation vessel, making sure to get as many cherries in there as I could. This was a bit challenging because I decided to use a plastic jug as my vessel, and the opening was fairly narrow. I then dumped my hydrated and very much alive yeast into the fermenter. Now, here's where things get a little silly. When making alcohol, something that you want to avoid is getting unwanted stuff in your brew. This can include bacteria, fruit flies, really any bugs of any kind. You don't want it in there. So the solution would be to put the cap on and seal it up, right? No, don't do that. That's a really, really bad idea. The fermentation process produces gas, which can fill your vessel and increase the pressure inside of it. If it gets high enough, it could potentially cause your cap to blow off, or in the worst case scenario, the whole thing could blow apart, essentially becoming a bomb. So I needed a way to let the gases escape without allowing anything to get into my brew. The most common way to do this is to use an airlock. I didn't have any more airlocks for this brew, but I had some balloons. So I stretched a balloon over the mouth of the jug and poked a few pinholes in it. This was not a perfect solution, but this does work and is actually a fairly common thing to do if you want to make really cheap wine. So I wiped off the jug and placed it in my room on a baking sheet. And a few hours later, the balloon started to inflate and the brew was merrily bubbling away. As you can see, the balloon was deflated and the bubbling had stopped in the fermenter, which told me that this brew was probably done, so it was time to rack it off. Racking is a term for transferring the liquid from one vessel to another. One thing you want to watch out for when making alcohol is that you want to try to avoid introducing oxygen later on in the fermentation process. Once you have some alcohol in your brew, having too much oxygen can actually cause it to turn into vinegar. So, pouring your alcohol from one container to another could potentially ruin your brew for this reason, and is something you really don't want to do. The way to avoid this is to use a siphon. So you set your origin vessel at a higher elevation than your destination vessel, put one end of the hose in your higher vessel and pull some liquid into the hose. Put the other end into your destination vessel and watch as the liquid begins to flow. I then put the lid on my glass vessel and then I pasteurized it. I won't get into too much detail here, but I pasteurized to make sure that when I bottle my brew, it won't start up fermentation again and potentially turn all my wine bottles into bombs. A few weeks later, I bottled my brew, and a few days after that, I did the first tasting. Alright everyone, it's time to give it a taste test and see how it turned out. So this is the cherry pie filling one. Pour it into a glass. Well, that's kind of the color that we're looking at. It's kind of like a peachy, but it's extremely clear. Like, look at how clear that is. The color is beautiful. It smells like wine. Doesn't smell very strong though. So this one hasn't been aging for very long. I think I bottled it 2 days ago. But I've been chilling this bottle because it's only a part bottle, and I didn't want it to get aerated too quickly. It's not great. It tasted a lot better before I pasteurized it. It tastes kind of watery. It's not bad. It's just not great. I think if I were going to make it again, I'd put probably more cherry pie filling in and less sugar. I'm finding that white sugar tends to produce an alcohol that's got a really bitter flavor that I just don't really care for. So I think if I were going to do it again, I'd do more cherry pie filling and maybe some brown sugar instead of white sugar. That, or maybe I'd try honey and make it into a mead adjacent kind of drink. But yeah, that's wine. Alrighty, so I'm going to rate it. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's not bad, per se. It's just slightly better than not so good. So, the way my scale goes is anything below 5 is bad, anything above 5 is good. So a 6 is slightly better than not bad. I don't think I'd want to drink this a lot. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this one sit and age for a while and see what it does. Because right now, it's definitely not what I was hoping for. It's definitely not very strong because I'm not feeling it at all. Normally with wines, I feel it pretty quickly because I'm a bit of a lightweight. So that was cherry cherry pie wine. Is it good? It's okay. It's fine. I'm actually surprised it didn't turn out horribly, because with all the other stuff that you get at a canned cherry pie, you would, like cherry pie filling, you would think that it'd be really, really gross. I wouldn't say that it's particularly dry, but it's not overly sweet either. It's just kind of weak. Like there's not much there. It's like water with a little bit of fruit and I don't know. Have you guys ever made those like frozen canned? That comes in those frozen cans of concentrated juice, and you add too much water to it, and it just tastes kind of watered down. That's kind of what this tastes like. It needs more flavor, I think. Yeah, if I was gonna make it again, I'd add more cherry, like more filling to it. Actually, I might try making it again. But yeah, that was a first pass. That was a first try. It was okay. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just not great. It tastes like wine, and that's about all I could say about it. So I know this is a little different than from what I normally do for content, but I've had this video sitting in my archive for about a month now, and I haven't really done a whole lot of work on the bus, and I needed to put out a video. So after all, this is called Cinnamon Roll Adventures, and not Cinnamon Roll building a school bus into a home thing. If you like this video, please let me know, because I have a few more of these waiting in the wings that I kind of want to play around with, and it's something I haven't explored here on this channel yet, and I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a try and see how it goes. So if you liked it, let me know, and if you didn't, please also let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.